Our entrance into the Anthropocene between the 18th and 19th centuries did not occur in a world that didn't care about the environment. We would have destroyed the environment, industrialized, polluted, produced without realizing it, as though it didn't matter. That's a total misconception. Let me give you an example. Until about 1810, the environment, the air quality, what was then called things that surround us, were essential. Why? Because at that time, to explain epidemics and health, medicine looked to environmental causes. According to the medical doctrine of those days, illnesses are produced when the air is altered by smoke, exhalations, things that smell bad, or miasma, in turn causing a population's degeneration. These illnesses can be transmitted from parents to children, and so they're considered to be very serious. In this context, institutions, governments, the police, especially in cities, all worried about the environment. It was incredibly important. For instance, in Paris, the police would check each day that artisans were not producing too much smoke or leaving foul-smelling liquids to flow into the streets. In this context, industrialization was a major issue. Why? Because what entrepreneurs feared more than anything was uncertainty. They wanted to be sure that if they invested massively in expensive factories, they would be protected from any interference by residents or the police. 1810 was a time of incredible development, particularly in the chemical industry, which is both expensive and highly polluting. In 1810, Napoleon's administration ordered a decree which protected businesses. Experts were called in, and the administration passed an official authorization. And once that authorization was granted, a business was allowed to pollute as much as it wanted. And residents and neighbors would not be allowed to shut it down. What did this mean? It meant that a neighbor's only legal recourse was civil justice. Although they were able to sue businesses in civil courts, the civil courts could not overturn an administrative authorization. They could only grant financial compensation as a response to industrial nuisance, pollution, the destruction of crops, etc. It meant that between the 18th and the 19th centuries, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in France, there was a shift between a situation in which the environment was extremely important and where the police routinely forbade artisans or industrials who polluted too much, to a situation in which the environment became much less important because it had become an object of financial compensation. It was possible to compensate material damages suffered by residents who lived near factories. In this context, industrialization still faced a major constraint, the medical doctrine I mentioned earlier. According to this medical doctrine, the environment was the main determining factor in a population's health. This theory would have to be bypassed or even disproved by other theories. At that time as well, after 1810, doctors and chemists were still very close to the industrial environment. They worked in the same system of authorizations brought about by the 1810 order. Doctors and chemists study mortality and longevity causes, focusing a lot more on riches, on social causes, rather than on the environment. They studied mortality very precisely in different neighborhoods of Paris, showing that actually the richer one was, the longer one lived. This gave the French administration a very strong argument to confirm its industrial policy. Factories could pollute, or rather they could smell bad and be a nuisance, because in the long term they'd produce a richer, more prosperous population in a greater economic wealth and therefore a healthier population. If the story is told in this light, the beginnings of the Anthropocene are no longer a kind of unconscious transformation of a productive system which ruined the environment. On the contrary, it is a very a contentious political story in which knowledge clearly gave retrospective legitimacy to industrial transformations, making it possible to disregard and dissipate fears, to circumvent complaints, to marginalize alerts, in other words, to uninhibit industrial modernity.